So today I want to find out which are better, primes or zoom lenses. So in order to do that, I got in touch with my friends over at Sigma and they were very kind enough to lend me some lenses to put through their paces. They also sent me the office chimp Tim just to keep him out of trouble for the day. But we are going to be putting Tim to good use. I have equipped Tim with the Sigma 24 to 70mm f2.8 whilst I have the Sigma 50mm f1.4, and we're going to be doing a bunch of tasks to find out the pros and cons of these lenses. So you ready, Tim?
Mate,
excellent, cool, let's go.
Thank you. Task 1, speed.
Capture a headshot, half body and a full length portrait as quickly as you can.
Your time starts once you've taken your first shot
and ends once you've taken the third.
Straightforward, should be easy with a zoom.
So Tim's obviously going to have the advantage here, which is good because I'm sure he's not gloating about it.
What I've got here is probably the best combination in the photo business, the Sigma 24 to 70 and me.
I'm going to have to move the camera physically closer and further away from Katie. So a headshot's going to be fairly straightforward, but then I'm going to have to go to half body and a full body. I don't know if you caught that because that was just like the dexterity of a cat, but I'll try and slow it down just to give Tim a bit of a chance.
That's where I want to be, probably at 70mm. So if I zoom out to 24, I can, it's tight. I think I might just do like a sway back as well, just so 70 and then 50 and then 24, and that should do it. Nice, it's in the bag.
Ready. Oh, I f***ed it. That wasn't as quick as I was hoping, but hopefully it's fast enough to beat Tim, hopefully. All right, task number 2. Bokeh.
Take a portrait with a super shallow depth of field.
Katie must not move. Obviously, this is where my prime should have its own benefits because of shooting at 1.4. Gonna get super shallow depth of field. Gonna blur that bad boy right out. Not gonna have any problems. Nice. Well, that was easy. Good luck, Tim.
Tom's got the 50mm, that's a 1.4 lens. This is a 2.8 lens, so that means I'm, what, 2-stop disadvantage. So Tom's got much shallower depth of field than I have. If I shoot at 70mm, I'll be sort of more zoomed in on Katie than Tom will be, and therefore my background blur will be slightly magnified. It won't actually be any more blurred, but it'll be magnified, so the bokeh will probably look a bit more smooth and rich and creamy, so hopefully that will give me a bit of an advantage. I'm gonna go for a really, really close-up headshot here. Nice.
Right then. Christ, that was like a throwing star. Right, low light. Oh, who would have thought?
Capture a low light portrait with as little noise as possible.
Your image must be tack sharp. I've definitely got the advantage here. I've got the prime lens, shoots at f1.4. Low light is going to be a breeze. Tim is going to struggle.
I don't want to put my ISO up too high because I'm going to get noise. One advantage that I will have over Tom is that I can shoot at a wider focal length and therefore I am less likely to get blur at that focal length if I use a slower shutter speed. So for example at 35mm, Tom's at 50mm, if I'm at 35mm I might be able to get away with a 30th of a second if I'm really still.
Tim, you've forgotten. It's
what?
A low light challenge.
Oh yeah. I'm at a 25th of a second, f2.8 and ISO 2000. Okay, here we go. One of those, surely one of those. It's got to be sharp.
Christmas tree Katie, are you ready for some portrait action? I could probably get away with shooting at about a 50th of a second and still get it sharp, and that's going to help me keep my ISO as low as possible. I mean, getting this tack sharp is going to be the hard bit. Cool, I'm happy with that. Task 4, moving target.
Capture as many different compositions of Katie as you can while she's walking.
You cannot move position.
Katie will be moving towards me, I guess, and I can't move. So I'm thinking that probably puts me at an advantage because I've got the zoom.
Clearly, I am at the disadvantage in this one because having a prime is going to make compositions tricky. This is kind of like at a wedding where you're shooting the bride coming down the aisle. Normally, I'd have 2 cameras. I'd have one with a longer lens, one with a shorter lens, and I'd kind of switch. Haven't got that luxury today. Stuck with a 50mm, so I'm going to have to be a bit more creative with compositions. I think, although it says don't move position, it doesn't say I can't move up and down. Oh God, that went quicker than I thought. That's what she said.
Okay, so I'm gonna use high speed burst, continuous AF and IAF, and then I guess I'll just zoom in and out. Okay, off you go. Let's do it. Perfect. Thank you.
So task 1 was the speed portrait, taking the headshot, mid-shot, body shot. How'd you get on? I suspect you did better than me.
I think I probably did, although because you were always at 50mm and you used your body to move back, I think your perspective is going to look nicer because I was getting the same frame at 24mm but closer as you were at 50mm but further away. But I think in terms of speed, purely.
Yeah. Well, that was the name of the game, right? Yeah. The name of the game was get those 3 shots as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So the times are in.
Oh.
I got my shots done in 3.6 seconds, which I think is pretty good for a prime. You got yours in 3.1 seconds. So you were faster, which I suspected anyway, but not by a massive amount. You know, technically the zoom is the faster option for changing between compositions really quickly, but not that much quicker.
No, half a second. Not a huge amount for 3 shots.
Task number 2 then, bokeh. We had to get a nice shallow depth of field portrait. Initially, I think the prime's definitely going to win this one, or going to have the advantage, because f1.4, obviously it's going to get a super shallow depth of field. How did you find it with the zoom?
I mean, I could see through the viewfinder that 2.8 wasn't giving me that blurry a background, certainly not compared to the 1.4. Zooming in to 70mm where you're at 50, that enabled me to kind of enlarge that background blur. And also, by moving closer to the subject and doing a slightly tighter composition, probably gave me a bit of an advantage, but I still think you're going to win on that. I still think the 1.4 will be too much for me.
Looking at the results, the 50mm f1.4 definitely has the thicker blur of the lot. However, I was surprised by the bokeh on your zoom. Even at 2.8, using those little tricks where you can get that extra bit of reach with the 70mm end, you also ended up getting a slightly more flattering portrait as well, I found, because obviously the 50mm, I can't get too close. It's going to start ever so slightly distorting facial features. It's not a wide lens, but it's wide enough that when you're shooting close up, you do get a bit of distortion. It does look a little bit unflattering. 70mm, definitely better for portraits close up. Task number 3 then, low light. Again, I felt like the prime was going to definitely have this one in the bag. There's a massive difference between f1.4 and f2.8 when it comes to low light in my experience. So how did you get on with the zoom? Did you struggle?
Yeah, a little bit. So it's actually 2 and a bit stops, isn't it? 1.4 to f2. So you're getting in more than 4 times the amount of light than I had. I found I had to crank the ISO up quite high.
I noticed also you shot at the wide end.
Yeah, I did that because the more you zoom out, the wider your focal length, the slower the shutter speed you can shoot at and expect to get blur-free shots handheld. Blur is a random thing, so every time you take a shot, the blur looks a bit different to the last one. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. You know, so if I took 100 shots, there's probably going to be a couple in there that are like pretty sharp because I didn't happen to move during those particular exposures. So it's more trial and error, but you can do it.
With a wider angle lens, you're going to see the effects of camera shake less, aren't you? Whereas obviously when you're shooting with a longer lens, the shake on your hand is magnified and intensified. So yeah, absolutely. Shooting at a wider focal length is going to help.
You'll often hear people say, you know, shoot at 125th a second or faster if you're shooting handheld, but actually it depends on the focal length you're shooting at.
With my f1.4 lens, I always managed to get a sharp shot using 100th of a second. So I did try at 50th of a second and I was just ever so slightly struggling to get it. So I just upped the shutter speed a little bit to 100th of a second just to guarantee it. And I managed to get an ISO as low as 640, which is pretty damn low. I mean, there was no light other than those fairy lights in that room. So I was really impressed with that.
I would say the lens lost it for me in many ways.
Yeah, so we're blaming Sigma for this one. They're just terrible lens, isn't it? Who do you work for again? Task 4, the walking task. We had Katie moving towards us. We had to get as many different compositions as possible within that very short amount of time, even though Katie was walking at a very moderate pace. It went so quickly, didn't it? Like it was really, really difficult. And obviously you've got the slight advantage, I felt, because with the zoom, you can very quickly go from a super wide angle to a really narrow focus. Arguably, the zoom is the more sensible choice, gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of changing your composition, right?
I think so. Tough on that, I thought. I think the zoom was probably more versatile, a little bit easier. Also, there's that slight problem that it can make you lazy though. So people sort of always just think, oh, I'll just stand exactly where I am and I'll just zoom in or out, whereas a prime forces you to move around and be creative.
And it's kind of not the right way to use a zoom. No. Although for this purpose it was to demonstrate how much versatility you get from having a zoom like that. You should really think about the focal length that you are shooting at and choose the focal length based on the shot. You know, you think about that first, then take the shot, not just zoom to fit the frame. You need to take into consideration what that focal length is going to make your image look like.
You've just got to be careful that you don't fall into that trap of thinking, oh, I've got a zoom, so I'll just make it easy on myself and zoom out or zoom in. Certainly in certain situations like I'm stuck at the back of a church, I can't move back, then the zoom is the
ultimate flexibility, isn't it? Yeah, it's the safety net. almost compared to a prime. So for me, what I'm taking away from this experience is that primes are definitely the better option for shooting in low light, for example, because it allows you to shoot handheld pretty easily and keep that ISO down for nicer, crisper images. And also shallow depth of field. If you want a super thick blur to your background, then primes obviously have the advantage.
And zooms, you get that flexibility. Perhaps if you've only got one lens and one camera, and like if you're going traveling or if you were shooting a wedding and you just had the one body, zoom might be the better option for you because they're just so versatile. I suppose one way to look at it is that almost if you imagine a set of scales, you've got like aperture on one or versatility, if you like, on the other. A prime is a wider aperture but less versatile, and a zoom is the exact opposite. You get a bit sort of less wide an aperture but it's more versatile. So I think you've just kind of weigh it up and decide what it is you're shooting and which lens is going to suit you better.
And ironically, I had a GP's appointment recently and this kind of action just reminds me of it for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, I had to cough. On that note, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and also subscribe to the channel. Tim, any last words?
Bye, Sigma.